What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Eclectic Beard. So this go round, we'll be taking a look at 10 infamous British gangsters. Um, this is Watch Mojo, but however, every so often they got some, at least topics that are interesting enough to take and do follow-ups on. So this is what this is. One of the things I like looking at here in the U.S. On our, but yeah, cause American reaction, all that. That's kind of self-evident. But anyways. One of the things I do like looking at is looks at like gangsters, but also like narco stuff, drug drug cartels and how they're brought down and stuff like that. So this kind of on brand for me personally, the type of stuff I look at outside of YouTube. Anyways, now I'm gonna go ahead and say I apologize if for whatever reason things get kind of funny looking. But my camera, I don't know. I have a feeling here in the next couple weeks I'm going to have to replace my camera, my microphone, my headphones. I don't know. When it rains, it pours. I got all kind of shit going on. Fuck it. We're going to push through, though. Because that's what we do on this channel. So, 10 infamous British gangsters. Let's get to it.
10. Lenny McLean. Frequently dubbed the hardest man in Britain, McLean was known to most people simply as the Governor.
Are you gonna pay? Barry makes sure the administrative side of the business runs harmoniously.
While his gangster credentials aren't as prominent as some, he did become Britain's most famous bare-knuckle street fighter, and reportedly one of the best. Throughout his career, McLean said to have fought in almost 4,000 matches.
Wait. Alright, so what are the qualifications on this video for gangster? That's my question. What are the qualifications they're using for a gangster? Because I think a gangster, and I'm thinking Al Capone, mugs with Tommy gun, mofos with Tommy guns and illicit activity and stuff like bare knuckle brawler. So is Kimbo Slice.
And to have won most of them.
Well, I used to mind the toughest clubs in Britain, all over the country. I had about 20,000 barroom brawls.
An important figure in the East End as a bouncer, bodyguard and enforcer, he often associated with people such as the Kray Twins and Charles Bronson, before in his later life he worked as an actor.
I suggest you get those guns. Quick!
Number 9. Thomas McGraw.
Was he gangster? Like in the street terms, like, you see somebody you don't want to mess with and, they've done some crazy stuff. He's gangster. Yeah, he's gangster that way. I didn't hear of any crimes being committed or nothing like that, really. I mean, he was an enforcer. All right, cool. Not going to take and, doubt the validity of his gangsterness just because he looks like he could probably eat me for breakfast. Just put that out there. But if anybody's wondering why I started at number 10, I went ahead and skipped their intro because that's a lot to sit through. And I'd edited it out anyway, so why not? Whatever.
Born in Glasgow, Tam the licensee McGraw's criminal career started off with burglary and armed robbery, and he eventually became one of the most wanted men in Scotland. In the 1980s, after somehow avoiding a stint in prison after a failed robbery, he began to expand his criminal empire by selling heroin and purchasing numerous clubs and pubs. He was one of the key figures in Glasgow's ice cream wars, where violent confrontations become commonplace among criminals using ice cream vans as a front for drug sales.
So the ice cream man was a front for gangsters. That's pretty... You're going to use that as a front. I mean, why not, I guess? But heroin and, buying... It's funny how many these people that are involved in illicit stuff have legit, stuff as their fronts to take and wash the money through. Ice cream. I think that's the first time I've ever heard of somebody using ice cream vans for something like that. That's okay. So hopefully none of the American gangsters are watching this. They'll get ideas. They'll have the mafia taking and running the ice cream trucks, taking and selling kids nutty buddies and stuff like that.
Situations become commonplace among criminals using ice cream vans as a front for drug sales. Number 8. Charles Bronson. With his taste for fighting guards and inmates alike, Charles Bronson became known as Britain's most violent prisoner, and is one of British crime's most notorious figures.
They said, I'm bigger than my name.
Born Michael Peterson, Bronson
I was gonna say I know Tom Hardy, in which Tom Hardy's one of my favorite actors. Like I think at this current time he's one of the better actors who put some, just the way he portrays the characters he portrays. I think there's not a whole lot of people that do it as good as him, and he's still, in my opinion, he's established, but he's still so early enough in his career, because you see these method actors that been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years and are just top notch. I think 20 years from now he's going to be talked about in the same vein. So I want to see his that movie he's in, Bronson.
I'm bigger than my name.
Born Michael Peterson, Bronson began as a petty criminal and was first imprisoned for armed robbery.
Prison was finally a place where I could sharpen my tools.
Upon his release in 1987, he entered the world of bare-knuckle boxing, but his fighting career was fairly short-lived because 69 days later, he was in jail again. Out again in 92, he was arrested a third time for conspiracy to rob and has never been freed since.
And would you like a cup of tea too, mate?
Number 7.
Wow. So he apparently just his predilection for crime, but it's funny. That's two so far with the bare knuckle brawling. I wonder if that's going to be a running theme. It's just, I don't know. In my opinion, we all taken, at least those. I like watching boxing. I like watching UFC and stuff like that. I grew up watching boxing. UFC is fairly, it's what, last decade and a half has took and come on the scene. It's biggest thing as far as stuff like that is concerned. But I still enjoy watching really good boxing matches. To do the bare knuckle stuff, that's a different breed, because that's going to hurt a lot worse than somebody would, because the gloves at least have padding. Like, that's a whole different beast. Like, that's basically legalized street fighting, or illegals. Anyways, it's basically street fighting.
Freddie Foreman. He's best known as Brown Bread Fred, or the godfather of British crime, as many publications have come to refer to him, but Foreman says he's nothing like Marlon Brando.
All I wanted to do was make money so we could live a decent life.
One of the East End gangster scene's most feared figures, he was close to the infamous Kray Twins and was implicated in numerous murders and other criminal activities.
Once you pull the trigger, you never know what's going to happen. So.
Though never actually convicted of killing anybody, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison for disposing of the body of Jack the Hat McVitie, and later in relation to 1983's Shoreditch Security Express robbery.
I feel like when my time's up, at least I've had an eventful life, if nothing else.
Number 6.
What I find so far funny is, like, 3 of these cats, or all 4 of them, have been portrayed. It looks like he does, I don't know about acting, but at least interviews, and probably has books and stuff like that. It's crazy how people that probably should be behind bars capitalize, because they're not convicted. They capitalize on their stories. Just insane to me that's just crazy. That's just crazy, because they're not telling the whole story.
At least I've had an eventful life, if nothing else.
Number 6. Tommy Comaford. The hometown of the Beatles has had its share of shady characters. This includes one of the first big business criminals to establish in England the kind of international drug trafficking network that you perhaps usually link to a mob overseas. Drug baron Tommy Tucker Comaford was instrumental in forming the first serious drug dealing cartel in Britain, which made the Liverpool Mafia the richest in the country. His first stint in jail came after a bank robbery, and during his long criminal career, he was sentenced to more than 34 years behind bars. Number 5. Desmond and Dominic Noonan. These two brothers were the head of one of Manchester's most infamous and ruthless gangs, which by the late 1990s had become...
I'm sorry, the one brother, just a look of him. The one guy big, bald, the other one shorter, and the look on his face of somebody you'd associate as a gangster. The bald one, yes, he looks like not somebody you want to mess with. The other one looks like a lackey, but the fact that he's a head,
one of the most notorious crime families in the whole of Britain.
We don't do everything nice, but you know, we do look after each other. We look after our friends.
Okay, so apparently I got that wrong.
Involved in drug trafficking, nightlife security and armed robbery, the Noonans' reign over Manchester's underworld lasted over 20 years.
By day it's run by police, by night it's run by gangsters. Manchester is where I was born, where I live and where I'll die.
During that time, they were also suspected of being responsible for more than 25 murders.
Jesus.
Desmond was stabbed in 2005 and died of his wounds, while Dominic is currently serving 22 years in prison for arson, blackmail and sex offences.
Shut up, I'll send someone out to beat you up in a minute.
Number 4. Frankie Fraser. One of the most recognisable faces in modern British crime, Mad Frankie Fraser was a guy you didn't want to cross.
The police say I've killed 40 people, not 41. If they'd have said 41, I'd have really been upset. I hate odd numbers.
And the nickname is not just for show. He was actually certified insane during a short prison stint after World War II, a conflict he'd managed not to take part in by deserting. Fraser eventually became an enforcer for the Richardson gang during the 60s and was reportedly involved in numerous episodes of torture and murder.
I allegedly pulled a guy's teeth out with pliers. I only wished it had been true.
His violence followed him.
He sounds demented as hell. Jesus Christ. Only wish it had been true. So what did you use?
In prison, where he would often start fights with other inmates and guards.
That is where I slung Eric Mason out with an axe in his head.
Number 3. The Gunn Brothers. Heads of the Bestwood cartel, named after the Bestwood estate in Nottingham where they set up their criminal enterprise, brothers David and Colin Gunn became the city's foremost gang lords.
In the 1990s, the brothers had risen through the ranks from petty criminals to underworld figures, a rise largely unchallenged by the city's other criminals.
Drug trafficking, protection racket.
What's funny is talking about their, largely unchallenged. Something tells me there were challenges, and that wound up being violence on the streets. It's just normally how things go when it comes to crime, and you got somebody trying to move in and take, be the big dogs in the area. Something tells me that something tells me there was violence involved, and there was people that tried bucking them, and it probably didn't work. Like, if something tells me there's probably a few dead bodies that were attributed to other things that are probably tied to those two.
Corruption and murder became commonplace under their watch, so much so that the city earned the nickname of Shottingham. As their empire grew and drugs flowed in, Colin started becoming more and more violent and volatile.
Probably doing drugs then. A lot of times you can, you got the violence and stuff like that comes along with being a criminal, especially a mastermind or, head of a family or head of a gang or cartel or whatever you want to call it. You add drugs to it, normally that level of violence just steps up.
Empire grew and drugs flowed in, Colin started becoming more and more violent and volatile, as steroids and cocaine use heightened his worst impulses.
Yep, steroids.
Under his watch, even innocents would pay the price of his crimes. Number 2. The Richardson Brothers. Charlie and Eddie Richardson were the leaders of what many still consider the most sadistic and ruthless gang in Britain, the Richardson Gang. They were often simply referred to as the Torture Gang due to their preferred way of settling scores and intimidating rivals and transgressors. After holding mock trials, their victims could be subject to electric shocks, teeth pulling using pliers, toe cutting, or even being nailed to the floor.
Were they formerly special services or something like that, or were they trained by Americans? The only thing I didn't hear was waterboarding.
The Richardsons controlled South London, but ended up in a feud with the Krays that lasted into the mid-60s.
The Richardsons, they were frighteners, really vicious people.
Number 1. The Kray Twins. The most infamous gangsters to ever call London home, Ronnie and Reggie Kray, were the most prominent criminals in the city's East End over the 1950s and 60s.
Well, no.
Armed robbery, hijacking, murder and general violence were only some of the brothers' specialities while heads of their own gang, the Firm. As owners of several nightclubs in the 60s, they became part of the swinging London scene and gained a certain amount of celebrity, even appearing on national television. But they were finally arrested in 1968 and essentially spent the rest of their lives in prison.
Now, before we start, I've got a little joke for you. You'll love this one. Paranoid schizophrenic who walks into a bar.
There's going to be a weird jump cut. I know this. Apologies for that. Kiddo needed food, though. So now that she's got her ramen noodles. As I was saying, everybody's been on this list has been increasingly more dangerous and involved in more activity and more brutal. These two right here, the fact that after a certain amount of time, they never got out of jail again. I mean, it seems like, probably a good idea for that.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out these.
All right, so there we go. Top 10 infamous British gangsters. This is an interesting list. I want to take a look at more lists like this. At least, more. I'm just stuff like this interests the hell out of me. Like I said, outside of YouTube, like I've looked at like Narcos. I've looked at I say Narcos, not Narcos, but like the drug running type shows, like the shows on or the documentaries on Discovery and the ones that they've got on like Netflix and stuff like that. On drug traffickers and how they take and interact, the interaction between drug, the cat and mouse game between law enforcement and those that sell the drugs, those that actually take and do the processing, the manufacturer and the movement of them, and just all that whole type of thing just fascinates me, because here our government basically declared a war on the fucking citizens with a war on drugs. And we've been reaping the consequences of that horse shit for the last 40 fucking years. Yay us. So it's interesting to me. And then you got stuff like you got crime bosses, and you got crime gangs, and you got like the mafia and stuff. All that type of stuff just fascinates me, because it's a different kind of mindset. Number one, you got to be highly intelligent for that, because you got so many people that are up underneath you, and all of these people, they seemed crazy, but I can guarantee you, even the Mad Frank or whatever, I can guarantee you he had probably genius level IQ, but at some point in time with that genius level IQ, get almost insane. So, maybe stuff like that happens with some of these cats. Who knows? But the fact they're able to take and do this stuff for so long, I mean, you got to take and be smart enough to know how to set up your organization to insulate yourself from direct contact, so it doesn't fall back on you regardless if you give the orders or not. Like that kind of stuff right there. Because I'm sorry, you gonna have people that are like, yeah, I'm not going down. Nobody likes to snitch. Snitches get stitches. But you've also got the mofos that I can cut a deal and I can cut down my time and I can get the hell out of here. And you got stuff like that. And the fact that they're able to take and do things the way that they've done just shows a level of intelligence that you don't associate with criminality, because mostly you hear about dumb stuff. So this is highly interesting. I want to look at more stuff like this. Y'all be good to each other. Love yourselves. Peace.